DreAllDay.com.
Dre Baldwin, DreAllDay.com. Let's talk about absolutes. There's the understanding that I want you to get from this message that the most successful people, they live by absolutes and definites, not by maybes, should, could, would, and just suggestions. They suggest to themselves like, hey, I could do this, I might do this, this is a good idea. The most successful people live by absolutes, meaning this is absolutely what's happening. This is absolutely what it is. This is absolutely where we're going. This is how it's going to be. They are absolute and definite in what they're doing. They're decisive, in other words. The root word of decision is incision. And what is an incision? An incision is a cut. So decision, what it means is not just about the thing that you've decided to do. It's also about all the other things that you're not going to do. When somebody tells you to make a decision, what are they usually telling you? They're telling you, all right, you got all these options. Let's cut off all these options except one and just stick to one. That's what it means to make a decision. And that's what being decisive is about. And the most successful people, they're usually very decisive about what they're doing, how they're doing it, when they're doing it, where they're doing it, who they're doing it with. They're very decisive. Whereas people who are not as successful, usually one of the reasons why they're not as successful is not because they don't have no tools or access or opportunity or information. It's none of those, the usual suspects of excuses that people come up with. Those are none of the real reasons. Real reason is because people who are less successful usually is because it takes them longer to take an action that a successful person takes quickly. So successful people take an action in 1 hour that it takes an unsuccessful person, it might take them 3 weeks to take the exact same action. And now you multiply that by 10 actions. Now you're talking 10 hours of work versus 30 weeks of work. How long is 30 weeks? That's damn near half the year. That's 6 months. And so the successful person, they just get to the success faster. Now you might say to yourself, well, Dre, well, if I get to the success slower, that's still success, right? Technically, yes, but eventually we all run out of time, right? Time doesn't go on infinitely for everybody. So just because you're moving slow doesn't mean your life is going to extend to a longer period of time just because you're slow. It means you're just going to run out of time to create and enjoy your success that it took you so long to get to, whereas you could have got to it a lot faster had you been a more decisive individual. You follow what I'm saying here? So this point is, the more successful the person, the more decisive, the quicker they come to a conclusion, and the faster they actually take action on the conclusions that they get to. And the usual reason why they're able to come to conclusions so quickly, the more successful person, there are several reasons, but I want to give you a few that you should keep in mind. Number one is their confidence in their own abilities, their confidence in their decision making, and it was another thing I was going to say, the principles. They have principles that makes it easy to make decisions. You see, when you have clear principles, it's easy to make decisions because every time you have to make a choice and you have options, all you have to do is defer to or refer to your principles and ask yourself, okay, what principle do I need to look at in order to make this decision? So you're not making every decision just looking at it as a blank slate. Let me just figure this out from zero. You're looking at it as, all right, what are my principles? Which principle of mine does this decision refer to? And you make a decision based on your principles, because principles, folks, don't change. Strategies can change slowly, tactics change moment by moment, but principles don't change. So when you have clear principles, it's easy to make decisions because you always defer to the principle. What's the principle say? All right, the principle says this is what I'm going to do. It's kind of like if a person, any of you watching this who is religious, like you're a devout follower of a certain religion, you follow the principles of that religion. So which means every time there's a decision that you need to make, you don't have to decide. You're not starting with a blank slate trying to figure out what to do. What's the first thing you do? You look to your faith, to your religion, and your religion says this. You say, okay, this is what the religion says. That's what I'm going to do, because you're a follower of the principles of that religion. So you don't need to spend a whole lot of time hemming and hawing and thinking about what decision to make, because the principles of the religion that you have chosen to follow tell you what you need to do. So you don't have to think too hard about it. Based on those principles, you come up with your strategies, and those lead to your tactics. But when you have no principles, When you have no principles to follow, you have no SOPs, which stand for standard operating procedures. Well, you don't have any principles, and there are a lot of people out here who have no principles. They're just running around just trying to figure out what to do moment by moment. It's very hard to make decisions because you have nothing to base it on. You're just basing it on however you feel in the moment. And you should never base your decisions on just how you feel, or let's not say never, but you shouldn't be basing all your decisions on how you feel, because your feelings change moment by moment. They're like tactics. Your emotions can change. You can feel great one moment and not so great the next moment. You might have ate some food that doesn't feel well to you, or you were planning on it being a nice day and it started raining, or somebody just gave you some bad news, or somebody cut you off in traffic. That can change your feelings from moment to moment, but principles do not change. That's why having principles matters so much, because when you have clear principles, it's easy to make decisions because you just refer to your principles, and that's how you make your choices. And because you are so steadfast and belief of your principles, it's easy to be confident. Your confidence goes up because you know exactly why you're making the decision that you're making. If you're unsure of why you're making a certain decision, then your confidence is not as high. And because your confidence is not as high, you're not so sure of the choice that you made, even though you made one. And now you're kind of like halfway on your decision. And how are other people going to be willing to follow you? How much would you be willing to follow a person who's kind of halfway on the decision that they made? All right, probably not that much, right? And how much would somebody be willing to follow you if you're halfway on a decision that you made because you had no principle to base it upon? You can't even explain why you made a certain choice. You're just saying, well, it's just how I felt in the moment. All right, that's not sustainable. You can't build anything that lasts on that kind of framework for decision making. So this is why, explaining all this out, why the most successful people are usually the most decisive. And the reason is they're not successful because they're decisive. They're successful because they have clear principles, and because they have clear principles that they can articulate very simply, and they can explain it to anybody. They can explain it to a fifth grader, and a fifth grader would get it. Because they have clear principles, it's easy to come up with strategies, and it's easy to decide moment by moment what to do, because it's based on the strategy, which is based on the principle. So with all that being said, here's what you need to do. Here's your call to action. You need to come up with your own set of standard operating procedures. You need to write them down. What are your standard operating procedures? And I'm not talking about what you do moment by moment. Like if it's a yellow light, you hit on the gas, or do you hit the brake? That's not what I mean. Those are tactics. Principles are the overarching themes of your life and the way that you operate, regardless of what anybody else is doing, regardless of what other people say, regardless of public opinion or popular opinion. This is the way that I operate. This is my code of operation. What is your code of conduct? Every business has a code of conduct. Sometimes you see in companies, somebody might get fired because they violated the code of conduct, or they might get suspended because they violated the code of conduct. So you need to know what your code of conduct is. Do you even have one? Many of you do not. So my call to action to you is you need to sit down and write it down. Your code of conduct. Here are my principles. Here are my standards. These are the things that I do not waver on. And all your decisions and your actions are based on, does this adhere to my standard operating procedures? Does this adhere to my code of conduct? If the answer is yes, then that means that's what you do. If the answer is no, then you absolutely do not do it, because it does not adhere to your standard operating procedures. This is how successful people can be way more decisive. They can make decisions much more quickly, and they can move themselves to action much faster than everybody else because they have this. So their decisions are easy. Not necessarily it's easy to make a decision, simply because their principles are telling them exactly where to go. They are guided by their principles. This is why, again, people who are religious, I can, even though I don't claim any specific religion, I can usually communicate with them very well and get along with them well. Why? Because I know that they have a set of standard operating procedures, because their religion tells them what it is. They're not randomly coming up with stuff moment by moment, which is what a lot of people do. And this is why a lot of people are scattered, because every time something comes up, they got to try to figure out what to do. They got to try to figure out a framework. It's not the way you operate. Not if you want to be successful, that is. Not if you want to create success fast and you want to increase the velocity of your success. You need to be able to make decisions faster, which means have principles in place that decide for you, not you figuring it out every time, no, just winging it, which is what most of you are doing right now. But good news is you can do something about that. I just told you what it is. So 2 things for you to do now. First of all, text me to get my daily motivation message straight to your phone. My number is 305-384-6894. And this is all listed down below in the description as well. And go to workonyourgame.net, get my free training. You want to get to the next level of your income and revenue in your business. And you know that you're going to need some process, some standard operating procedures in place to do it, so you can stop doing stuff randomly and hoping that it works. Hope is not a strategy, folks. Go to workonyourgame.net. The training is free. Just go there, get the free training. At the end of that training, those of you who are interested, I'm going to tell you how you can schedule a time to get on a call with me, and we can actually talk about how to apply this stuff in your business immediately. So that's that. That's all I got to say. Come up with your principles. Work on your game. Dre Baldwin.